کنفرانس در پارلمان انگلستان با حضور نمایندگان برجسته هر دو مجلس. محکومیت جنایت اسید پاشی به زنان و موج اعدام‌های وحشیانه توسط حکومت آخوندی. فراخوان به لغو محاصره ضد انسانی در لیبرتی.
Well, thank you, Alex, and it is indeed a great pleasure to be back because I had an enforced absence for a number of years from meetings of the NCRI supporters in this country. So, whilst I wasn't overwhelmingly pleased to leave my cabinet position, I think that my departure was considerably sweetened by the knowledge that I can do a lot more to help support the NCRI over the coming years. And it is indeed a great pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure to be back because I believe that we are at a very crucial time in the history of Iran and the West's relations with Iran. Whilst one understands that there is always a need to negotiate even with countries of which we may disapprove heartily, I think that when one sees what is happening in Iran, it makes that process extremely difficult. It's noted that the so-called moderate President Rouhani, and it was noted not just by me, but by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, that during his first year as president, there were some 1,000 executions in Iran. That the treatment in particular of women in Iran under the current regime is terribly, terribly distressing. We've heard about the acid attacks, which I'm sure have distressed us all, but maybe also our hearts are lifted by the fact that the women of Iran clearly are not going to accept that sort of intimidation. And we heard, and this was a piece of news that was covered right across the Western media, of the execution of Rehani Jabara only last week. I've always been very impressed when I attend meetings in support of the NCRI that so many of its members are women. And indeed, of course, its leader, its distinguished leader, is a woman too. And I think that that alone, that commitment to the equality of the genders in Iran speaks volumes as to what the Iranian regime is on the one hand and as to what, on the other hand, an alternative is offered by the NCRI of Maryam Rajavi. So I'm looking forward to supporting you a lot, as I say, over the coming years. I wish you every success, and I believe that your cause is very, very just.
My colleagues today will speak at length about the different issues in respect to our concerns with regard to the horrific human rights violations in Iran. They'll tell you about our fears for the building of a nuclear weapon in Iran, which will change the whole balance of power in what is the most dangerous area of the world today and has been for a very long time. It is vital that we do all we can to ensure that those nuclear weapons are not built and are not in the hands of the medieval theocracy we call the mullahs. And indeed, that's another reason for paying tribute to the PMOI, who have, in many respects, got all the information that the West needed to recognize that Iran was building a nuclear weapon. It was this organization that smuggled that information out and got it to Western nations and alerted them of the dangers of nuclear weapons. And that's another reason for supporting the PMOI. And finally, And let me say that the mullahs are again trying to dupe the West. They've done it again and again and again. An organisation whose track record is one not to be trusted. And that's another message that we, the PMOI, the friends of and supporters of that organisation, bring to the government of this country and to many other governments regularly, that this is an organisation which cannot be trusted, which cannot be given leeway, and which has one of the worst human rights records seen in the globe we live on for a very long time. However, my job is to speak specifically about defending the rights of those 2,700 people that Struan talked about in Camp Liberty, who have been treated despicably by the Iraqi government. Maliki's government has turned Liberty into a hellhole. And I pray for the residents of Liberty day in, day out, because they are living in conditions I wouldn't consider my very worst enemy should ever experience in any sense at all. Beyond the realms of human consideration, I want to make 4 demands to them. I want to demand the recognition of Camp Liberty as a refugee camp under the supervision of the UNHCR. And I want the recognition of the resident status as refugees and protected persons under the 4th Geneva Conference to be meaningful. I want the annulment of all oppressive decisions by the Maliki government taken against the residents of Ashraf and Liberty. And I want the referral of Camp Liberty's dossier to agencies and individuals in the government of Iraq who were not acting on the orders of the Iranian regime or affiliated groups. I want that annulment because I want it to be known worldwide that the Maliki government wasn't a help, was a massive hindrance and was a proxy of the Iranian government. I want the guaranteeing of the safety and security of the residents of the United States, which according to the quadripartite agreement of the 16th of August 2012 commits to support safety and security of the residents until the last resident leaves Iraq, as well as free, open access to medical supplies. Nothing could be more inhumane than denying medical supplies to those people. And I demand that the governments of the West demand that of the new government in Iraq too. And finally, perhaps most importantly, I demand the complete lifting of the siege on Camp Liberty, ensuring the reinstatement of standards and requirements of normal life, according to Articles 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the 3rd section of the memorandum agreed by the nations who decided they would call residents of Ashraf as protected persons under the Geneva Convention. I demand that lifting of the siege on Camp Liberty.
As I said before, and I've seen it with my own eyes, we owe so much to you people here today to continue the fight against what is happening in Iran. I've seen it in the gathering in Paris on a number of occasions, and the last occasion it was astonishing the number of people who came to the meeting in Paris from all over the world, And I've said to many, many people who don't know about the situation in Iran what extraordinarily outstanding it is, the way throughout the world the nations come together to protest about what's happening in Iran. And we saw Madame Rajavi speaking a short while ago, those who were here for the film, and once again she spoke with clarity and with very iconic figure that she is, strongly, and her points she made are absolutely relevant to what we're seeing in Iran today. Certainly, I'm on top of what I've observed as an observer and participant. It's astonishing the way that what is happening in Iran under the Iranian regime is not getting the level of publicity and condemnation that it should be getting. And I've just been appalled, like many, to hear the accounts of the awful discrimination against women in Iran and the acid attacks. I mean, the publicity about these should be out there all the time, and it's not. So that's one of my themes, that I will do all I can to say to people who've got the ability to get attention given to the situation in Iran. And I have great respect for Madame Rajavi, and it's really very encouraging that she's the leader of the movement against what's happening in Iran as a woman, and also as a very thinking, independent person. So I'll say no more than that, just to say to you all here, and many others who would like to be here, let's keep up the fight, and we will certainly, led by Alec Carlisle, will do all we can to do what we can in Parliament and to point out to our government, American government and others, just what is happening in Iran. Thank you.
I just want to endorse 2 or 3 things that have been said, and I shall be brief. First of all, the points you made, the previous speaker made, in terms of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty. We now have the photographs of people who perpetrate such wild crime against people who are defenseless in some of these camps. And my plea is not simply give them the people who are there a refugee status under the aegis of United Nations, but more important than that, let us make sure that the evidence we have collected is being passed to the International Criminal Court, so that at some stage they are brought to justice of the crime they have committed against humanity. The second point I want to make is basically very straightforward, is capacity for nuclear weapons. And I think that is something that the West ought not to forget. And I don't mind, you can negotiate to make sure that those sort of weapons of mass destructions are not being produced or are controlled. But what worries me most is the extent to which we in the Western world seem to be negotiating, seems to be encouraging people like Ravini in terms of thinking as if he's a moderate leader in Iran. He is not. A leopard cannot change his spots, and that's precisely what he is. You know, if we can negotiate about Turkey and its membership of European community and say that we are worried about your human rights, what the hell are we doing in terms of talking to the Iranian regime, whose human rights are worse than even any other country that I could think of? Thank you very much indeed.